how will this affect businesses and how are they going to afford the increase in utility fees? And that one, from my standpoint, came up numerous times, sometimes by the same people. Will there be any discounts available for commercial customers to install detention ponds or other items that reduce runoff? Will there be a maximum amount or cap on user fees? Why not include a specific fee in the ordinance language? That one came up several times as well. Why not a property tax? Why not a sales tax? So others are included in paying the fees. A couple suggestions we got on some of our presentation stuff was maybe include more pictures of infrastructure failures, maybe even a video of somebody doing an inspection of a storm sewer. I know the pictures we had, I've seen some of them in person, and then some of the pictures don't exactly give you a good view of actually the significance of the failure. You almost have to see it in person, or I don't know if the video will help with that. With a growing list of infrastructure repairs and more to be identified, how do we plan on prioritizing issues? And then several people wanted us to be specific with what items we're going to be responsible for. If you remember, we were saying that we were going to be responsible for all the underground portions of the stormwater system, and there continues to be more and more questions and concerns about a lot of the above ground stuff. Coming from customers, coming from our fellow city departments as well. We're getting a lot of questions about ditches traveling through neighborhoods. Some of them, a concrete line ditch or a stone line ditch. Some of them just a ditch. So there is a need to for either us or the city to maintain those areas. Whether we can or should or not is a little bit different story. But there's a need there, and there's an expectation of customers that we maintain those. A written policy prior to asking voters to approve any future fee structure would help us. I know specifically Andrea and Matt get questions all the time, and having a written policy that we can say, hey, there's our written policy that says what we're responsible for, would sure help. That way we're not giving customers mixed messages, that way we're not saying something different than maybe the street department is saying. So, and I'm not sure we have the experience to write that policy totally in-house, so that type of thing may cost some money, which, as you know, our department isn't collecting any money, so. Did I miss anything in that list of stuff? Andrea, Matt, any?
You mentioned property tax, sales tax.
Yeah. Okay. Did you guys have any ones of those that specifically you heard more than the others?
I had a lot of people ask about streets where there's no gutters and the water just runs off the street people's yards. And some of them even had water problems in their homes because of what they say is coming off in their yard.
I heard that too, actually, and I think it was at least what I drew from that was a general lack of understanding that stormwaters run under streets, and thus they're a public good used by everybody.
Yeah, we definitely weren't proposing to address issues where there was no stormwater infrastructure, at least not right away.
I mentioned that to the ones that I talked with, yes.
Heath, can I add something to that? So the third bullet point you had there, where it talks about commercial businesses and installed detention ponds or other items. I think the question I received a lot about that was people who are already held to another standard by DNR or other folks who already have detention or retention in place. Will there be some sort of credit for that, or how is that going to be handled? So I think it's what's already been built was more the question.
And I know the answer we were giving people was, first of all, that policy had been developed, so maybe developing that policy in advance of a vote would be an advantage. But what Matt had learned through Black Beach, what is common is only allow discounts for commercial businesses, and only allow discounts for people that are going above and beyond the existing ordinance. So the existing ordinance says you need to have a detention pond for a 15-year storm event, and they have one for a 25-year storm event, and they're going above and beyond, and they get some sort of discount. And I mean, like 10% or something small. It's not a big number. And so that's what we were telling people they weren't exactly satisfied with that answer.
So, when you say a written policy might help, and maybe you're not making a recommendation, are we talking about an executive summary, or are we talking about a full utility structure? Or somewhere in between, or neither? Or both?
Probably somewhere in between.
I think you probably need to go toward the full utility structure, because everything you do, from the billing, you know, the credit program, who gets charged, I mean, that's the next step of this process, should it have passed. Well, working through with Black and Beach was to go and develop some of this.
How much does that cost?
Roughly 50,000.
Oh. That's a lot of money. I was expecting something
And a lot of that,
a lot bigger.
a lot of that is development of a process. You know, how do we get the data from either the county or our own set of parcel information? How do we get that into the billing system? I mean, and then how does that generate a bill to go to you or to Heath or whoever at that point? And so,
You know, that's where a property tax or a sales tax, or some combination of the two, makes all that a lot simpler. You know, I mean, we were gonna do things the most complicated way possible in order to be the most fair in terms of exactly how much water is running off of your house and your driveway and all that. That's a lot of work.
but if you go with a tax, you lose the ability to do the rebate programs or anything like that. Because,
That may be, but then,
so you don't have the mechanism to drive the green infrastructure, to drive the actual reduction in water.
well, I think we could probably still have something like that, couldn't
It's not very common if it's out there.
we? Yeah.
Most of the people that offer a rebate or a credit program are offering it, and they're doing exactly how we intended to set this up with the impervious area calculation.
And not to make excuses, but we had to get this thing on the ballot. You know, we got the results, and it took longer than expected to get Black and Beach, to get you all through the process of coming up with something. And then, all of a sudden, you know, we had a deadline to get on the ballot, and so we put something on the ballot. And I think it's to your all's credit that we got as close as we did, you know, with reaching out to the clubs and having people in and listening to them.
Lenny, what I was hearing was more, they compared it to the healthcare plan in Congress several years ago, you know,
Yeah,
vote
pass
for
it.
it, and then,
Right.
then we'll tell you how we're gonna structure it.
I'm not too sure that if you didn't just put that, what is it, the dollar something per 500 square feet, nobody would know what that meant for them unless they went and measured or whatever. But that might have been enough, really, you know, just to have that set in stone, because that was a big problem. You had, well, how much is it gonna be? And of course, I heard a lot of, well, you can raise it any time. Well, that's true of any of the utilities, but at the same time, we're only raising when we need the money, you know, when we have demonstrated the need for the money, and I gotta get it past this board, which is the representative of the people, ratepayers. So, you know, I mean, that kind of is a bit of a reply to that. But we do have till, what, August now to get on the ballot again?
If you're not in November, it's probably first part of August.
November
Because
is,
that's now the intention, the new target?
not necessarily, but November is probably realistically the earliest we can get on the
Yeah,
ballot.
because what I'm hearing, I mean, if
We
you
have to have
we're gonna write a whole
stuff together by
utility policy, I don't know, I mean, can you get that done by August?
Don't know.
That's a challenging thing to try to do, I would think.
Maybe by policy, there's an in-between, middle ground that Stephen mentioned. The city of O'Fallon, and I have not had time to read their website, but I'm hearing from Andrew and Matt that the city of O'Fallon has an interesting policy. It might be 10 pages long, but it's an interesting specific policy on what they take care of on their website, and they're just doing it out of general fund. So it's possible to borrow and steal from other people on what they do, but if we would say, Matt, write one tomorrow, it's not something we've written before.
Do we, Matt, Andrea, do we have a ballpark on how long it would take to do a full fleshed out deal?
I don't.
All we did was ask for a ballpark price.
Yeah. I mean, I can get that information and email that out, but.
One of the issues we've been struggling with all along is we're using borrowed money. And the more of that borrowed money we spend, with always the chance that we never get any funding and can't pay it back, we kind of wanted to be conservative with that. So developing the policies cost $50,000, so we said, okay, let's wait on that one and see what happens. So it's always kind of the chicken and the egg thing, which, how much do you do before the funding is approved?
Certainly along those lines, then charging for administrative stuff, I think I'm, you know, not all that big on that idea at this point in time, you know, because they're doing the majority of what needs to be done. I understand where you're coming from. But
I have some specific numbers on that. I can get to that really quick if you want to.
Sure.
And I'm using Abe's number, so Abe, correct me if I'm wrong. Stormwater cash as of a couple days ago was about $240,000. And that is from the $1 million borrowed back in August of 17, I believe. We've been allocating since July 1 of this fiscal year 10% of administrative stuff and IT non-payroll costs as we budgeted. We budgeted to do that, and so we've been allocating 10% of those to the stormwater fund. The total allocation date of just that amount is $271. So like 10% of Matt's wages, 10% of my wages, and a bunch of other stuff.
He actually goes back to fiscal year 18.
Okay.
Starting soon after the money was borrowed.
And that was actually discussed during like a budget workshop, and I apologize if we didn't make that exactly known.
Well,
but that was,
you know,
that
I'm
was
sure I
intentional.
voted on it.
It got lost in the weeds.
Okay, I don't remember it, but I will say that as we draw down those funds, I don't know if anybody else is hesitant to borrow more to keep things going. And I just saw that as a way to extend what there is left now.
And it definitely
If there's 260 and we can spend 50 and make some real progress in getting a document that'll help us, you know, get the funding right and get a proposition passed, that would be money well spent.
So we can do two things moving forward. We can stop allocating that 10% with our next fiscal year's budget, no issue whatsoever. We can also reverse that 10% allocation and put that $271,000 collected year to date back to the stormwater. I'm not sure reversing what was already decided
I
is
don't think we need to go.
the best thing, but we can't. I mean, your direction is.
I'm not asking that, I don't think, I'm just saying.
But very easily with a new fiscal year budget, that, you know, he can stop
Yeah.
doing that immediately, just to charge for Andrea, and if we feel like we need to do something,
If we've been doing
we
it for a
charge
year
her.
and a half, then that's not that huge of a chunk of that money, I don't think, because we spent, what, $250 with doing the study with Black and Beach to begin with, so that's out of it, so.
Dave, based on just generally accepted accounting principles, if we stop, I mean, I think it's a good idea, Lenny, but if we do that and stop allocating administrative expenses, would that accrue more debt to other departments, or?
I don't want to call it debt. It would shift expense back to electric, water, and sewer. In the ratio of roughly half of that would go back to electric, 25% each to water and sewer.
Okay.
All we're doing is taking a pool of shared administrative costs, allocating them 50, 20, 20, 10, 50%, 20%, 20%, you know.
But
It's certainly not unfair, but in terms of, it, I mean, it's discretionary.
Our facts
I would
have changed,
assume.
you know, the lack of revenue. We anticipated funding source by this point, which has not
Yeah.
materialized yet, so it's kind of a
Yeah,
change
we
in
kind of
accounting
already
assumptions.
pushed back our payback schedule.
We were a year behind to begin with, and now we're another 6 months behind at a minimum.
I'm comfortable with whatever the board directs. You know, there's like he said, there's a variety of things. Reversing the previous charges would be the most kind of difficult to present or justify, but, you know, we could start allocating as of this month or, you know, more cleanly first of the new fiscal year, like he said.
And you don't have to make that decision right now, but if you wanna do it effective July 1, when you approve the budget later, just approve it that way.
Tell me to take it Department 2 and Department 5 expenses for stormwater out of the
That's what
budget.
happens.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, Mike. Thank you.
Just to, I know this says this in the memo, but I just wanna make sure it's in the open meeting. Of course, we have some options moving forward, but we still do have the resolution from the city from June of 17, giving us direction to implement a stormwater utility and a comprehensive stormwater repair program. So I think it's still our responsibility to continue to try to find a funding mechanism to make our repairs and do what they, said we need to do. So, just to talk about the possibilities moving forward, at the earliest, like I mentioned, November of 2019 would be the earliest ballot that we could possibly make work for voters to consider, and that would mean getting our plan formulated by about August. And there's several things we could do, and there's probably more than I've listed here, but I just want to talk about each one of them a little bit. We could place a specific fee in the ordinance, like Lenny mentioned. We could say $1.39 or whatever the fee is. The positive in this is the customers, they know the fee is going to stay level and remain constant, and we got a lot of feedback from customers questioning, having a little bit of trust issues with, oh, are you going to change the fee 2 weeks from now, or 3 weeks from now, or 2 years from now? Even though the board has that authority in the other departments, some customers weren't comfortable with that. The negative in this is that it limits the ability to change the fee without going back and getting voter approval, which, as we know, is a 50-50 proposition, so.
Hey, Mr. Lawyer, I'm wondering if we put in some sort of stair-step rate
In the ordinance.
in the ordinance, and then say, at this time period, then that sunsets and it becomes a normal fee structure and operates under normal board procedure. Is that something that's possible?
Sure. I mean, look, you're, I don't know if anybody ever asked me this, but in my legal opinion, you never had to put it on the ballot in the first place. It's a good idea to put it on the ballot because you want the public to get an opportunity to be heard on it, and I think it was the right thing to do. But if you're asking me from a legal standpoint, were you obligated to do it? No, I don't believe you were. I think it was the right decision to do. So I want to make clear, I'm not beating you up about it. So when you ask me questions about, can we bind ourselves in but then ultimately switch it back, I believe you can because, again, you are a utility, you're a public utility. Your main issue is, can you reasonably relate the fee that you're charging to services that are being provided? And when you talk about fairness and impervious amounts of land, et cetera, that all goes to the issue of, it's not just a fairness issue, it's an issue of what can you legally do. You have to be able to reasonably relate the fees that are being charged to people to the services that are provided. So that's why doing it that way you have to. So
A true fee would not require a vote.
correct, and
But the
that's
Supreme Court struck down a fee structure that did not satisfy their requirements, right?
well.
And that's why I
If
think
you look at
Black and Beach recommended this, and
And again, I'm not beating you all up for
Sure.
doing it. I think everything that you get an opportunity to take to a vote of the people, you ought to take to a vote of the people and let them decide. If they don't want to do it, okay, they don't want to do it, because, ultimately, while you all are responsible to the council is also responsible to people, and if you take it to the people and they say no, if you take it to the people a second time, explain it better, or tweak it and they still say no, then at that point, it may behoove the council to take a look at it and decide what they want to do. I think it's perfectly appropriate to do it. I think there were some issues in the way the case Black and Beach referred to. I think there were some differences in things that could be done. However, certainly, I'm not thinking they gave you bad advice. I'm just saying I don't know that it was an absolute that it had to be done that way. In my opinion, there were ways that could be done differently. But if you're asking me, well, why didn't you mention that to us, James? Because I agreed with them that was the best way to do it. And I was in hopes that the public would see the seems like pretty clear need that we get it approved, and we could do it this way, and that, again, in my opinion, is the best way to do it. But going back to your question, could you establish a fee structure and a guarantee to the voting public with it being a sunshine provision at some point? I think absolutely, because it is a public utility, and if you do your calculations where you're going to be able to relate it directly to the services provided, you shouldn't have to every 5 years come in. It's not like it's a sales tax
And the
or
argument
one
is,
of these things.
in the first 1 to 3 years, we're figuring out how much it does actually cost.
Correct, correct. So yeah, I think that's appropriate, and again, I think it's your best way to go. You know, there was discussion of the sales tax, of property tax, and the problem with both of those is, well, in addition to, there are some complications with getting stuff like that approved. You have the concern that people really hate sales taxes, and only to a lesser extent do they hate property taxes, and it's probably harder to get those passed than it would be that you can show the people, this is the reason why we need this, and we're gonna reasonably relate it to the services provided. And remember, this is your utility. If you decide you don't like it, vote it out and we'll eliminate it, and et cetera, et cetera. It's not like this is a private utility that goes to the Public Service Commission and just periodically goes, come on, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, we need more money, and the PSC says, yes. You know, this is a situation where as a public utility, you all are directly responsible to the public, and that's why they let you all have public meetings and promulgate rates, et cetera, is ultimately the voters have the veto power. They've got the veto power at the ballot box, whereas with private utilities, they don't have that, which is why the Public Service controls them. But did that answer your question? I got really long-winded there, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So,
On that line, if we did implement a sales tax or a property tax, my understanding is it could never be, the services you provide for those taxes collected could never be switched to a fee structure. That's part of the Hancock.
That would be correct.
Oh, wow.
once you go tax, you're
Yeah.
all tax.
Without taking it to a new vote of the people, I think,
Okay.
I think under Hancock, you could go in and say, we want to abolish the tax and we want to switch it to a fee structure, because again, it's subject to the approval of the vote of the people, and if that's what the people want, if people are like, we're sick and tired of this thing, we want this to be a fee structure, I believe you could appropriately put a vote. But yes, you
Okay.
couldn't just automatically change it, you couldn't switch it without a further vote of the people.
And then with the tax, your tax exempt entities would not be paying any fee if it was a property tax. Again, if you had a sales tax, some of your large stormwater generators probably don't pay no sales tax. So,
Which,
Palmyra is
those
doing
are the
theirs
one
through
that pay for the
sales
sales tax, I see.
Right, well, yeah.
I mean, for obvious reasons.
Mhm.
Matt had an interesting thing, and I put it as the last possible choice. We could install a combination of a couple of options, like maybe a lower user fee, lower than $1.39, and then some percentage of sales tax as well. Small sales tax increase, small user fee.
Should the city use the sales tax to,
Well, we would
for
propose.
their part, for their above ground stuff? or what?
like MSD, I think their capital projects are funded, projects are funded from a property tax. And they were going to the vote for, their O&M is funded from a property tax. They were going to the vote of the people this time for a user fee for the capital projects, and it also failed.
So we weren't proposing that the city use the sales tax for above ground stuff, but I guess that's a possibility.
And 3 million you say you need, we can't start with 2 million. I mean, regardless of the fact that you need to pay back $1 million to start with.
Yeah.
Just put your-
I mean, that pretty much ties up a lot of money right out the get-go,
Yeah.
so.
We do have these projects that are sitting there waiting to be done.
See, I mean, Black and Beach, well, we paid them to do a calculation. So
Yes,
they did a
I understand.
calculation based upon the fees we said
Exactly.
we wanted to provide. And
the
There was
services
one-
we wanted to provide.
There was one little snafu in it, they did the calculation, assuming the city departments would pay a stormwater utility fee for the roofs and parking lots, not for the streets, but the roofs and parking lots. And that was where the $1.39 came from. And I told them that probably wasn't gonna happen. So that $1.39 is even a little bit light, is what I'm saying. And
And the
difference
city
in
didn't
that-
tell us to create half a utility now and half later, so just answers my question.
And if we
Honestly,
start-
that
we start adding
$1.39
above ground stuff, it, again,
Yeah.
It increases the calculation.
I like the idea of putting a number in there and
On
then
the
either
other-
having a sunset or in 5 years to say, look, we are gonna come back and revisit this
that,
and turn it into a system that we can adjust.
that may slow down some of the repairs and stuff, just like the old hospital sewer is gonna be a large costly project. You know, putting the sunset in there, we can plan around it,
Well,
but if we have to go back to the vote.
I'm not talking
people-
about, that's where I wouldn't, I mean, you'd have to word it to say, okay, at the end of the 5 years of without raising rates, then we'll start to raise rates as we need them or something, you know, I mean,
I just don't wanna hamper us.
it will hamstring you possibly there in years, 3 to 5 of, once you're really heavy into fixing stuff, and there's a big list of things that need it, but
Once we,
you got nothing right now, so.
once we pay back the $1 million loan to the electric fund, maybe we do a bond project where we accelerate some of these projects, and I don't want
That's
to
true.
hamper us from the ability to pay back something by sunsetting something or having to go back to, we'll have to go to the vote for the bond issue, but not the ability to pay back the bond. So,
But you've got $1.39 until such time as you get something in.
and we don't know what we're gonna find out there either, so.
I think what Lenny and I are saying is a sunset in a way that we don't have to go back is just almost
So like a 5-year rate guarantee or
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah. Because I think our thinking is that,
Because everybody
Some-
thought, oh, as soon as we, first of all, there was no numbers, so nobody knew what was gonna be their cost, and there were a lot of kind of numbers floating around, and you actually have to do your calculation for yourself, but then, so no number, and, that meant that we could do whatever we wanted, and we were gonna raise it right away, and all this good stuff, so.
and I think it's important enough that we get
We were
the
so close.
fee structure, the utility setup, and the funding mechanism right for the next 10 or 20, 30 years. And I personally pretty strongly believe that sales tax and property tax are not the right way to go. So whatever it takes to get us in there, so over the long term, we have the thing that works best for you guys to be able to do what you need to do. It's just my opinion.
One of the things we're struggling with is we got customers and other city departments wanting us to do more than we were proposing. Not just above ground stuff, flood wall pumps and stuff like that downtown. And so we're struggling with, Black and Beach did that calculation for us, and we trust that their calculation is accurate. The 3.1 million sounds like a lot of money. And sounds like you should be able to do a lot more than we were proposing to the average person. But that being said, some money is definitely better than no money, which is what we're saying now, some is better than none. But I also don't think we can go out and propose a higher fee and expect that to pass. We can't propose $1.45 or 500 and expect that to pass next time. It either has to be $1.39 or lower, or we're not gonna get by.
So we don't have to do anything about this.
Not necessarily, I just kind of wanted your feedback, and we'll continue
To be working on this, work with the city,
Yeah, there's
hammer
actually
those things out.
There's actually a city department meeting tomorrow that Andrea and Matt are gonna go to with me.
Excellent.
And they're getting a lot of calls on stuff and they want to handle, so we're gonna hopefully come up with something in the interim at least. Sorry to go on and on about that, but it was important to.
discussion.
Get you guys' feedback.
You've got an hour before you're down in the
Huh?
city. It's 5 o'clock now, so. You gotta be somewhere tonight,
Yeah, somewhere between about 6 and 6:15. A couple of us need to be walking out the door, so.
right? Yes.
I don't think hurt anybody's feelings if it was earlier.
Yeah.
That's likely at this point.
I think so too.
So shall we move on to Surrey Hills inflow, I&I?
As part of the smoke testing work that Trek had done, we found a number of defects that were on private property. That cleanouts that didn't have caps, broken cleanouts that were allowing groundwater to enter. There were some service defects, foundation drains. The big ones are driveway or area drains, you know, that are connected to the sanitary sewer. And I just want to bring this before you so that when, you know, the uncapped cleanhouse, it's easier for us to just go out and buy a cap and put on. But some of these, like the driveway drains or the area drains, it's going to require some monetary expense on that customer's behalf when we send them a letter and say, hey, this needs to be removed. So just want to make you all aware that is, I mean, I see it no different than us requiring people to remove sump pumps from the sanitary sewer.
Right.
The city ordinance says you can't add stormwater to the sanitary sewer, whether it be through a sump pump or an area drain in this case. But I just want to make you all aware that there are these problems out there, and we intend probably later this spring to
You're
send
somehow
these
hooked
letters.
to a sanitary sewer, or going in through a manhole, or how's that working?
What's that?
The driveway.
The driveway drains, you
Yeah.
know, they may have a low spot, you know, a basement garage. And so the driveway comes down, they got the drain right there. It's connected to a foundation drain that runs inside, and it's connected to the sanitary sewer. You know, maybe they have to install a sump pump at that point
Yeah.
and pump it out independent of the sewer, so.
Okay.
But I just, before we sent these letters out, and we'll have to work with the building inspector's office, because they'll have to be aware of it, just like they were the sump pumps.
And you may have said this, but what was the time frame we gave the sump pump?
We gave the sump pump 30 days, I think, is what they, at least to come up with a plan. I mean,
So.
these
so-
problems didn't occur overnight, so I don't expect them to be fixed overnight, but there needs to be some action, you know, within the first 30 days.
So if Stefan has a $10,000 driveway drain he needs to remove or something like that, and he at least calls after he gets the letter in 30 days and says, hey, here's my plan, and then we'll be able to work.
We'll have to set out milestones to make sure he stays on schedule, because ultimately, we just want to make sure that has been disconnected, so.
So this is consistent with what was done at Lake Apollo? Okay.
We
In that
didn't
case-
find any driveway drains or anything like that in that area.